Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you
I
today?
am good. I'm good. Another Wednesday has rolled around.
Right, I know. And I just realized next week is daylight savings time change, so we'll be losing an hour. So I might be less chipper. We'll see.
I have this feeling I'm going to be pretty grumpy next week too.
Maybe
Because
we
unfortunately the animals do not know that the time
Oh,
has
yes.
changed.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, welcome to the program. This today, Ready Set Action. We're talking about email marketing hacks. So tips for small business and marketing professionals, really to look at conversions, quality. Email marketing is to me is just a very man. Everybody hates spam. Everybody uses email marketing. The quality can be off. We've all gotten messages that are just not for us. They're for someone else in the company. I mean, there's just a lot of bad stuff out there that's really ruining email marketing. So, we're going to talk a little bit about some content tips and some tech tips and vendor tips. And we'll go through those. So here we go. Let's go ahead and start because I think we have a lot to cover today.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yes, so I'll hand it over to you. Let's start with you, Dee. What's going on? What's tip number one?
So I think tip number one is personalize your message, right? So, but maybe even going back a step is understanding who you're reaching out to, right? To your
Mm-hmm.
point of, I get so many emails from companies that are trying to sell me something that say, "Oh, I noticed that this is what you do for a living." Mm-mm, it's not. So I don't know where you noticed that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I do. So I think first of all, is understanding how you're doing the outreach. Is it, prospect versus subscriber, right? And getting that message correct. And then um, personalizing it with the subject line, whether it's, hi, Deb, you know, I noticed you have a dog, right? Or, something, right?
Mm-hmm.
That gets my attention. It's like, do I know you? Have we talked before? What are you going to be, trying to sell me? What do you have to talk to me about,
Oh,
right?
I
Kind of.
like the question. Like, do I know you? I think that's key for emails.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think that um it's got to resonate with that individual, right? Like the dog thing would draw me in. But you don't want to come across too spammy or too salesy, so that there's a fine line that, that once you craft and start crafting these messages, maybe get somebody else to take a look at it
Mm-hmm.
and see it from a different perspective, right? And make sure that you think that you are communicating, and that your message is clear and concise, and maybe it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
because we know what we're talking about with our products, with our solutions, but that person that we're reaching out to may have a different point of view. So, get some feedback and some input before you just put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, segment that audience because you may have products that you sell and you may be like maybe somebody buys earrings, right? And maybe they're clip-ons instead of pierced. Well, you don't want to start sending them a whole bunch of stuff about pierced ears if they don't have pierced ears, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, it's all about really understanding who that audience is and what's relevant and important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Purchase history, where they're located, can also help you to understand what you're communicating to them and when.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a big client base that is in the heart of Colorado, or where was it, upstate California, that got like 12 feet of snow or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Yeah.
chances are they're probably not probably don't have internet access right now, so, be aware of those those
Right.
things that can also impact deliverability of that
Mhm.
message to people. And then I think the other thing is, just, um, that value of that personal touch is so important. So um, studies have actually shown that if you put a visual into your message, it increases your response rate by 650%. So I'll give you an example. Last week, I was trying to get a hold of a client, and um, I've been trying for like over a month to get a hold of this person, and there was no response at all.
Mhm.
I'm starting to get worried, right?
Mhm.
It's like, what's going on? Did I do something wrong? Is there
Mhm.
something wrong with them? That, maybe there's a
Sure.
health issue or something else going on. You start to put all of these thoughts into your mind about it. So, I sent her the subject line that says, "Timing isn't perfect," PAWFECT.
Mhm.
And inside, I put a GIF with you've probably seen it. I think it's a husky dog that's reclining and like typing
Yeah.
away on the computer, and it's just like crazy busy, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and I said, I know that, times are rough, RUFF,
Mhm.
but I'm here if you need me kind of thing.
That's cute.
And she responded to that,
Yeah, okay,
you
very
know,
nice.
but it's
Yep.
like understanding, like, when you can kind of play a little
Mhm.
bit, right, to grab that attention, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and if you can use humor and kind of interject that, everybody wants a good laugh,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they want to work with people that are fun to work with,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So,
Yeah.
if you can interject that, I think. And then the last thing before I let you go to tip two is, anytime that you can create a sense of urgency or scarcity,
Mhm.
it helps to kind of move that conversation to the next level.
Mhm.
So, think about, a lot of times for products, we all know it's about, oh, 20% off, but it's only until Tuesday, right? So you've got to respond in order to get that. But then when you're in consulting, maybe you've got an event coming up, so maybe you want to schedule something where there's some early bird pricing that's going
Mhm.
to expire ahead of time, and you give a discount for that, or anything really that creates that sense of scarcity, like only 12 seats are available for this
Mhm.
coaching program, so you feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to get in on that or I'm going to miss it for an entire 3 months or
Yep.
something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I like to, the only thing I add is I like to pay attention to some of the emails that I receive,
Yeah.
if they're cold or warm or whatever they are, just to see, because I've seen the cold email sequence where they go through it and then eventually there's kind of that, obviously you must be busy, so I'm going to let you be. And I'm always curious to see what emotional reaction I have to that. Do I want to say, oh, reach out later, or do I want to acknowledge it, or am I just like done? So I try to pay attention to what triggers those feelings in me,
Yeah.
to use those for other things too.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great point.
cool.
Excellent. So what have you found helpful as tip number two?
Okay. So I'm going to hodgepodge some stuff together. So, first of all,
Okay.
you touched on subject lines. I am a big believer in what that looks like. And I do think that whether it's cold, warm, or much, much more targeted, I do think it's always better to either be super friendly, like if you were emailing a close friend, how would you use the subject? Hey there, hi, hey, I thought you need to see this. Like, some of those sound salesy, but I think that's important, is to be familiar, because the thing you have to think about subject lines is all you want is to for someone to open it, and you need to focus on that goal before you think about what does the email do, because if they don't open it, it doesn't matter what's in your email. So thinking
Yeah.
about it in pieces sometimes will help you do that. So anyway, I think that's important, and you really need to think. We talk about personas all the time. Let's break these personas down and see, because I also like to be transparent and authentic. So if you really do have something that will reduce some time or do whatever, maybe you can touch on that too. But you have to be. I try to be very casual, very familiar with some of that. So that's a piece of it. And then the other, just I'd like to. I think we're going to talk more about the content in a second, but vendors. There's a lot of vendors who do mass cold email stuff, and that's fine. It takes a while to find ones, and you really need to negotiate what you want from it. Bad emails, bad deliverabilities. Like, you can have conversations up front that say, I expect this amount of deliverability if you don't get it. So don't just make your package as far as how many they're sending or even how many opens, but try to improve the quality of what you're getting, because it takes a couple months to run through the success of those, and you really have to learn about the messaging and the audience, but you don't know often. Even if someone refers you to it, it's a different audience typically, and it takes a while to know what those are. And unfortunately, I don't like huge batch cold emails, because it is spam at the end of the day. There's no way around it. It is spam. That's why the vendors use the emails that are like, get Whitmer Group, versus Whitmer Group, right? So they'll use these emails because eventually they're going to get devalued, dinged, and they won't be able to deliver. So that's why they do that, which they have to. But I don't know. I really do prefer finding smaller batches of people.
Yeah.
Finding common grounds. Like, even with LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, you can find people who have recently posted, recently changed jobs, new in their role, that kind of stuff. So really, I prefer to small batch the stuff. And to be honest, I don't do a lot of mass email in that way. I do use sequences, which like HubSpot and other tools have, which is just a single email that goes through a chain of, over 6 weeks. It goes out to, people can opt out. If they respond, they get pulled out of it. So that is a form of mass email, but it's much more, it's easier to segment for me, because I can, say, oh, this person uses HubSpot or this person uses something else, and try to do that. But I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is that, you really need to consider your audience as best as possible. I do at this point prefer to small batch my content and try to find specific things because I can spend just as much money or time on doing that and sending something out as I can, using someone to do the mass email tool. So, I've seen success in both places, but that's kind of more personal. And, Gmail certainly is increasing their rules for what has to happen to your domain to be delivered without spam. You see if you've noticed, up in the top of the emails, the unsubscribe button is often right there next to the email. I mean, there's mandates about that being something that is going to be, a requirement for deliverability. So there's a lot of tech things that you have to watch out for. Anyway, so there's some things, but I really like the combination of what your subject line says, pushing to open. Will this get open? Will this get seen? And then also looking at, how much prep do you put into this before you hit send? Because I understand, there's rates you can expect for open and clicks and whatever, but I don't know. You can spend time is huge, right? You can spend months not getting where you want to be, because you didn't, you're just like, okay, I'm sending 10,000 things and I understand I can expect this number. But if you wasted 3 months, you could have sold one person perhaps with a much, maybe you sent 10 really good people something. This is a tough one for me, because I'm just challenged by the value of it. but it
Right.
works for some people and it is important for some people. But anyway,
Yeah. I
that's
think
mixed
that
message.
you had mentioned cadence, and I think that that's an important consideration that we didn't really, I didn't remember seeing it on our notes and
Mhm.
preparing for this, but it's important to not just say, okay, this is the message I'm sending out this month,
Right.
but kind of build on it,
Hmm.
right? Each time
Yeah.
that you send the message, there should be relationship
Hmm.
coming back and creating a familiarity with your brand, with your offering, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so there is some time that does need to be invested in how is that going to flow,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Um, but I guess don't overthink it,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And really just try to get a message out there,
Hmm.
see how it works.
Yes. Watch your numbers. Yes.
Yeah. And then if you don't get a response, consider the whys,
Hmm.
right? Maybe it wasn't the message. Maybe it was the timing of the month,
Yes. Yep. Hmm.
depending on your
It's
audience.
too early in the morning or Monday, is probably not the best for some of that stuff. So yeah, there's a few tips for timing as well. That makes sense. I have a sequence. So I use HubSpot, as you know, but there are other tools for this. But my sequence, my email sequence that I use sometimes for more of a cold or warm email, there's kind of it, and I'm going to look at my cheat sheet notes. But there's like the intro email, right? There's
Right.
a identification, and then it waits a couple of days, and then I send what I call like a value, right? Like a here's the value you can see by prioritizing your content and creating lead magnets for whatever, right? So something valuable. Then I do something super short, right? So I throughout a sequence, I can kind of test as well,
Mhm.
things that work. And then I can slowly A B test, which I know you're going to talk about that, like in between those. But so
Yeah.
then I alternate value email and then I'll go straight to a tip, right? Hey, here's a tip how you do something. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you typically do look like into a breakup sequence, which sometimes could be, hey, do you want me to put you into my newsletter? Will you get a tip a month? Like think about breakup. What does that mean? If you think they're a real good target, maybe you want to invite them to just subscribe to that. And if they're interested at some point, they can reach out. So think about that.
Yeah.
You
Personally, I absolutely hate breakup emails. Absolutely hate them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have a relationship with you. There's no reason for you to break up with me.
Uh-huh.
Um, and, I get those a lot. And it's just like, oh, dude, you went there.
Yep.
And I think that there's a more positive spin on it that you can take. You can just say something, like you had mentioned with the newsletter, or
Mhm.
what's a comfortable next step. Hey, if you're not interested right now, do you want me
Mhm.
to just try back in 6 months or three
Right.
months or
Mhm.
whatever? Try to get some response, some understanding of their level of interest,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then if you still don't, my goodness, move on. There's,
Yes.
so many more. You can just
Mhm.
put them into a cadence in 6 months anyway
Mhm.
and say, hey, my timing wasn't right, when I reached out
Right.
earlier in the year.
Yep.
How's it looking now? Kind of thing.
Mhm.
But
And
I
don't
really,
right.
really hate those breakups. Oh, this is the last email I'm ever going to get from you. Well, I know that's BS because
You don't believe it, right? We
I'm
had a
not.
quick question just about sharing an email template. So I will post one in the comments afterwards. I have an article on the spam laws and rules that are coming up with Gmail, and then we can
Excellent.
share an email template or two as well in the comments and tag you so that you can see it, Kalash. Sorry. So we'll do that. And yeah, so that sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that is great. That's
Hmm.
great.
But yeah, I like what you're saying about, you know, what you were just talking about for that. They're going to come back. I'll be out. Don't tell anybody, but like sometimes I will put someone into my newsletter if I think they really could benefit from it. Because obviously they're going to unsubscribe, but the newsletter is truly marketing email where my sequence is a single sales message. So
Right.
it is a different thing for me, even
Yes.
how HubSpot is a criteria that is a marketing contact versus just a sales, a single contact. So I don't know. You got to find your way, and I always just love to test in small doses. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that A/B testing is so important. Are we ready for me to talk about that?
yes, go for it. Yeah.
So I think, if an email doesn't work, you can go down a rabbit hole just trying to understand why, right?
Mhm.
But I try to rely on data as much as possible, right? As
Mhm.
to giving me education. So you have to look at, okay, the time of day that it was sent out, the time of month that it was sent out.
Mhm.
If you're sending out emails on Super Bowl Sunday, that may not get a good open rate, right?
Right.
So, I
Right.
mean, you have to understand kind of like what's going on in the world around you, and what um, your timing of
Mhm.
everything. Or if you're looking to rent out an Airbnb for spring break, you better start those conversations way before, the parents are
Mhm.
planning on what they're going to do for spring break this year with the
Sure.
kids,
Sure.
right? So
Mhm.
it's like really think about the buyer journey along the way, and test out different calls to action too, to your point about the newsletter, right? So maybe you don't want to redirect them to the website per se. Maybe it's a special landing page that you
Mhm.
create that just
Absolutely. Yeah.
has that one message on it, right? And drive everybody there, to collect more information or get them to participate in a survey or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So look at what are the different calls to action that you can kind of play around with,
Mhm.
that also support what that subject line is talking about, right?
Mhm.
So everything
Mhm.
should kind of go together, short term and long term. um, and then send out a small batch like you said with subject line A, same call to action, then
Mhm.
subject line B, same call to
Yeah.
action,
Yeah,
and then
right. Why write more content when you're testing the subject line? It doesn't, and in fact, you're just going to confuse the results, right? So you need to test, like you can do that, and I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, so that then gives you the data that
Mhm.
you need at the end of the day when you're looking back through and all of these email, um, uh, generators, whether it's HubSpot or whatever that you're using, has the campaign data
Mhm.
attached to it. So you'll be able to see how many opens you got and what was that click through rate to that call to action. And then use that data to kind of help inform you, oh, this is a popular subject line. People are
Right.
interested in this topic,
Mhm.
right? And I get a larger percentage responding to this. So then move that to the next batch and
Mhm.
and repeat that. And if subject line B didn't work, then
Mhm.
okay, maybe you need to tweak it. You don't necessarily have to throw it away,
Yes. Yeah.
completely, but you
Right.
can tweak it and see if that works better.
And I do think it's better to make tweaks so you can learn it. And there's a question here, and I think it affects kind of what you're talking about with the data and the testing. Is that so the question is, we talked about the algorithm, and this cadence is email. You got day 0, 3, 1 week, second week, first month, second month, third month, and then so it really, this cadence is very much like, it just slows down over really quite a long time. So after a year, it's every quarter. So I think that hopefully you're using a tool that gives you as much data as possible, and you're using as much, like trackable links and all those things as
Mhm.
possible, because the hard part is if you have such a long follow-up algorithm, you do have to sort of give it time so you can see all that information. I do prefer a shorter sequence, basically.
Yes.
And then if it, depending on what happens in that sequence. So, and please, this is just my opinion, but and I hope I was saying your name right earlier, but like I feel like the first part of that could be its own sequence, and then if they don't do anything, where do they go? Maybe that's the monthly thing, but you kind of need to change something, right? Or let's say you saw that they opened them a couple times, or whatever happened in those first things, because mine has it where if they reply or engage, it does pull them out. But I feel like this sequence might be too, this is just my opinion, too long to make changes that you might need to do based on what you see. Because if someone is opening something more than once, or even some kind of something, right? I feel like you might need to change up the way you're speaking to them, and it might make a difference. So anyway, that's my thought, is that, and that's where the data comes in, right? Is how do you look at it? And then you can start, it's easier to A/B test the shorter cycle as well, right? So then you can start to look at what gets me more opens, or what gets me something. And then you can decide what that second half is. But it's good that you have this content for this long cycle. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I feel like you might need more testing, and you might need to shorten them into two separate, groups, or at least two.
Yeah. I think the average, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like it typically takes 9 touches to somebody before you really start to get engagement from that individual, and 9 different ways of touching them. So not just necessarily email, but social media is another great way of just commenting on their posts and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
I'm going off track with this discussion, but it's important to have that well-rounded marketing approach to things. And
oh, we just lost oh, here she is. I'll add you back in. There you are.
I don't know what happened. I was there and gone, but yeah, so I think that it's important, right? It's important to look at all of those different ways that you're going to be touching them. My preference is to a shorter burst of touches, in a email marketing sequence,
right?
And then followed by the other, rounding out of the other marketing strategies like calls and posts and things of that nature to really try to get the engagement up.
And with the sequences that I use, the additional touch points, there could be tasks within there, call tasks or action tasks. So for me, I have, sometimes it's a call, right? A phone call. I don't typically leave voicemails, but it is a call to see. And then a LinkedIn, either follow or connection request or something. You also have LinkedIn email you can look at. So those are a couple real simple touch points. In addition, we didn't talk about this, but you've definitely seen someone where they're on your website recording a video, right? Talking about something they saw. I think you see that. So, definitely can do that. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, this is all great stuff,
Yes.
I love sharing ideas. I love getting, input from the audience as well as to what's working for them, because we're all trying to figure this stuff out, right?
Yep.
And the audience behavior continues to change over what we all want to see and hear about, and when, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a complicated world that we live in when it comes to marketing. So the more input that we can get from each other, I think really helps us all.
Yeah. And the same, principle I use for optimization and Google ranking is Google wants quality to reach the user. I mean, we may not believe that, and a skeptic won't believe it, but it's true. Google will survive if we find quality when we're looking for it. So the same is true for email. Google doesn't want you to stop using Gmail because it's spam. it's your now
Right.
it's your Yahoo, which all the crap goes to. Like it just, or what, however people do
Mine
that.
has, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's it's not going to survive if it's a bunch of junk. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And
Okay.
really, it is all about creating that relationship, and that comes from
Mhm.
being a valued partner in whatever you do, whether it's product or service focused.
Yes, yes. So this has been good. It's always good to see you and chat with you. I think next
Thank
week
you.
we're doing some content-based things about quality and conversion-based content. So that should be fun.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. I'm up for it.
All right. I'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.